Sorry about last week, everyone. I had some personal stuff going on and wasn't able to watch episode 12 until today. So some of my thoughts are probably going to be influenced by that absolute dumpster fire of an episode we got last week. But besides, the recap would have been pretty much the same as episode 11. Alexis and Justin are toxic. Morgan is a terrible person. She might even have to add manipulative to her resume after her performance with Dr. P. And the other couples didn't really do anything wild or out of the norm. So yeah, there you go. There's your episode 12 recap. But let's move on into the episode 13 recap. I feel like some of you have already figured out where I'm going to go off the top here, and that is directly to Morgan and Binh. Morgan, you know what? You really wanted us to know, so I just got to give you a big congratulations on being a nurse, and also a big congratulations on ruining your marriage. Morgan, she's just so stuck on this apology, an apology which Binh has given over and over and over and over. And, we just keep getting this same song and dance from her. She comes across as a person who doesn't want to change, is not willing to change, and will never change, which is not really somebody that you want if you're matched in a scenario like this. You have to have that flexibility and willingness to adapt to your partner, and Morgan showed none of that. Meanwhile, Binh did. Like, honestly, you could have pretty much matched Binh with any of the other women on the show. Maybe we'll exclude Alexis from that, but Binh and Stasha, that probably would have been successful. Binh and Lindy definitely would have been successful. Binh and Kristen probably would have been successful. And instead, he gets stuck with Morgan, who had this whole thing, like as soon as Binh made one mistake, he didn't make a mistake, but as soon as he made one mistake, she just lorded that over him until their divorce. And, that is just not the sign of someone you want in your life. Like, think about that even in a work environment. If you had a boss that, like, on your first day, you made some mistake because you didn't understand something. Like, say someone told you that, I don't know, we'll just make up a random scenario here, that they had one class left on their nursing degree. And then you, for whatever reason, interpreted that as them not being done their nursing degree. Like, Lord forbid that sort of misunderstanding would ever happen, like in your job or whatever aspect of your life. And then you started going around and saying to one of your friends and confidants that the person who told you that wasn't a nurse, or like was misrepresenting themselves as a nurse because the information you were given told you that thing. That's just some random scenario I just created. Surely it wasn't exactly what happened in this relationship, because that would be a ridiculous thing to get divorced over. Like, imagine getting divorced over a minuscule, meaningless misunderstanding on day 2 of your marriage. Like, imagine that. And that is exactly what has happened here. This entire scenario should have rewind back to the honeymoon. Morgan tells Binh that she's not done her nursing schooling. Binh takes that information to Justin, and then it comes back around. I'm assuming from Alexis at this point, because I think that she's pretty much the root of all of the problems in all of the relationships this season. We'll assume Alexis brought that back to Morgan, and then Morgan has held that over Binh the whole time. But like, really, what is his mistake? Like, what did Binh do wrong? Binh had a problem. He went to somebody to go for advice. You know, that shouldn't be something that is discouraged. That shouldn't be a negative thing. But for some reason, it has turned into this huge mistake that Binh has apologized over and over and over and over for. Really just been totally ignoring my notes at this point, so we'll jump back into those. How much do we have to watch everyone beat this man down before somebody stands up for him? You know, it really goes to show how little the experts care about these people and these couples, that none of them stood up for Binh. You know, he is in a situation where, you know, really he does not feel safe around Morgan. He gets constantly belittled and degraded by Morgan, and he goes to his therapy sessions, and the experts basically just side with her without ever going back to address the initial issue. Never, like not even once. Like somebody, like say, hey, what is the actual root of all of this? You know, let's go back to that original incident. No, they just fixate on, oh, Binh, you just need to apologize harder. Binh, you need to apologize with more emotion. What? He's like pleaded and begged with her, and like begged for forgiveness, and that's not good enough. Like, are we not watching the same show? Absolutely ridiculous. And then finally we got to the best part of the entire episode, and that Dr. Pepper asks Morgan if she thinks the marriage is over, and we all know Morgan jumped on that immediately, and these two end up getting divorced. You know, Binh, this divorce is probably going to be one of the best things that's ever happened to you, because you escaped a life with this woman. You escaped a life of living with a bully. You escaped a life of being put down forever. You escaped a life of gaslighting, because what Morgan has done is an absolute masterclass on gaslighting. There should be like documentaries that just take their relationship from this season, splice it up, and use that as the definition of gaslighting, because it got to the point where Binh fully 100% believed that he was in the wrong here. You know, Morgan's even got people watching believing that Binh was in the wrong here. She's got experts believing Binh is in the wrong here. But we all watched, and if you go back to that first incident, you cannot tell me that Binh's response to that was off the charts. He had a normal reaction to a normal thing that happens in life. Like, their relationship ended because Binh was worried about something and went to somebody else for advice. Like, just think about that. How absurd that is. Even after, no, let's jump back. Binh, this divorce is not your fault. The failure of this relationship is on Morgan. And Binh, wherever you are out there, I hope that message gets to you, because you did not do anything wrong here. You did not. This is 100% on Morgan. And I know there are lots of people out there that would love to be in a relationship with someone like Binh. He wants to learn. He's eager to learn. He's eager to please his partner. He's eager to adapt to his partner, just that Morgan never gave him that chance. You know, is Binh the perfect man? No, absolutely not. But he wants to improve, and he wants to be that person for someone. And I really can't say the same about Morgan. And even after it's all over, we still see Binh trying to be a good person, trying to be nice to Morgan, and Morgan still being heartless. If Binh had been matched with someone with any degree of love to give, he would have been a yes on decision day. You know, they're done. Hopefully, we don't see either of these two for the rest of the season. Knowing Married at First Sight, I'm sure they're going to pop up, whether it's on the after show or decision day or whatever. They're going to be back again. But honestly, just get rid of them and move on. Let's jump to our second couple of the night, and that is going to be Kristen and Mitch. Mitch was looking miserable right at the start of that Dr. Pepper session, and honestly, I thought that entire thing was going to go horribly, and yet it ended up being pretty tame. At that point in the episode, I thought that this was going to be another dud of a week for Kristen and Mitch, but boy, was I wrong. First, we had Slurpgate, and Kristen and Mitch were talking in their apartment. No clue what they were talking about. Could not focus on that conversation because the sound person and the camera person just kept cutting to Mitch slurping on his noodles. You know, maybe they had an important conversation. We'll never know because all we got out of it was slurping. And then from there, we're going to jump straight to the end of the episode. And like you could see that build up that those ladies, all of the ladies, all five of them were ready to pounce. And once again, who is there stirring the pot? Alexis. Who is there to ruin another relationship? It is Alexis. You know, she must just feed off the misery of others because once again, she is all of a sudden thrown out there the comments that Mitch had made to Kristen's sister, which, you know, clearly anything that Mitch says to Kristen's sister is going to get back to Kristen. So it's silly of Mitch to have ever even had that conversation. But wow, did things get twisted on Mitch in a bad, bad way. So what actually happened? Mitch basically wants to tell Kristen that he thinks she's more beautiful without makeup on, but asks for advice from Kristen's sister on how to do that in a way that is good. Let's just let that look, for lack of better words, is good. Like, he acknowledges their journey. He acknowledges what he put Kristen through, and acknowledges that, you know, he wants to do it in a way that is good for both of them. And by the time it comes back to Mitch, it's all of a sudden that Mitch isn't attracted to women with makeup on, and that Mitch wanted a hippie girl. And, you know, he did say that he was expecting someone a little more hippie to walk down the aisle. And, you know, obviously Mitch should not have said those things, but this whole thing is hilarious because the root of that initial conversation was Mitch asking for a way to do it positively. You know, to say, hey, I just want you to know, I think that you're even more beautiful with no makeup on. You know, whatever it was. And instead, because it comes from Kristen's sister back to Kristen, it ends up getting to Kristen in the most negative possible way. And then, you know, basically the trap was set by all 5 of those ladies, and Mitch was sitting there the whole time while the trap was being constructed around him. And of course, he had no way of getting out. It wasn't even that he walked into that trap. Like, it was built around him. Like, there was no possible way for him to escape. The experts come out. It ends with Kristen saying that she is done. And you know what? I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I think that she was putting on a show for her ladies. We saw her getting all hyped up from Morgan. We saw Alexis starting that whole thing. I don't buy it. I think Kristen is going to give Mitch another chance, and we'll see. I know maybe the preview doesn't really align with that opinion, but I am just throwing it out there. And let's finish up with those two and move on to Alexis and Justin. They got to meet with Devon Franklin, and wow, was he a refreshing departure from Pastor Cal and Dr. Pepper. You know, I can't even, like, it's his energy, his vibe, his entire conversation. It was just so much better, just in every aspect. Like, I'm not even going to go into details there, because it was just better in every way, shape, and form. You know, he had me buying in on Alexis and Justin, and I know full well that they're 100% toxic partnership. Like, I know that their entire relationship is just pure toxicity. Yet when Devon was talking to Alexis and Justin and walking them through their issues, you know, I was buying into them too. Like, that is what you want out of an expert. Like, he was so good. He convinced me, like somebody who's very pessimistic about this couple, he had me convinced there for a second. Like, I had to shake my head and come back to reality. But hopefully he is on the show a lot more, because he was just clearly superior to our current round of experts. And one final thing for Alexis and Justin, I had no clue that they had not had sex yet. And it's really bizarre to me, because you go back to the wedding day, and you know, Alexis was basically making fun of Justin for being celibate. And then now we find out that the celibate guy is wanting to have sex, and Alexis is just repeatedly shutting him down. You know, she tries to sell some story about wanting to be dominated in the bedroom, and you know, from what we're hearing from Justin, is he's trying to initiate things and she's just not responsive whatsoever. And if you're Justin and you're making those advances and getting absolutely nothing back, like, well, of course you're gonna pull back. Of course you're gonna not want that. Like, that is, especially their first time together as a couple. Like, if she doesn't show that she's into it, that she wants that, why is the guy, would you push forward? Because, you know, in that scenario, it could only have negative impact on your relationship. You know, that first time, you should both be eager and want to have sex with each other. So we'll have to see how that plays out over the rest of the season. But really, I was just shocked about that. Don't have much to say about our last two couples, Stasha and Nate. Really the biggest moment here was that it came out that Stasha had cheated in the past. And, you know, even no matter how far in the past that was, not something you want to hear about someone you're in a relationship. You know, even if they've changed, even like no matter the circumstances, the scenario, you hear that about your partner, you know, it's a red flag. And that doesn't mean that you should end the relationship immediately, but that little seed is always going to sit in the back of Nate's mind. And at the start of the season, if you had to bet on which one of those two had cheated in a past relationship, I don't think many people would have been betting on Stasha. Nothing else for them. Jump over to our final couple, Lindy and Miguel. First off, this is an episode 12 thing. I thought it was a little unfair that their activity was the baby when everyone else got like a really intimate activity. You know, they're blindfolded each other, pouring wax on each other, and Lindy and Miguel are being woken up every 2 hours by a crying baby. I don't really think that that was fair to them, and I really think that even though they were in a good place, they would have benefited a lot more from some sort of intimacy exercise, more so than getting a baby. Really only one thing about these two from tonight's episode, and that was I don't really know what Miguel's strategy was with the entire conversation about ending up in a loveless marriage. Like, everything we know about Lindy tells us that she's going to have a negative reaction to that conversation, yet Miguel dove headfirst into that anyways. It was just very bizarre for me and came across very much as Miguel like trying to sabotage things with Lindy, like trying to create conflict with her, because he had to have known that she was going to react poorly there. Like 100%. Nothing about Lindy says like, oh yeah, she'll be totally cool with this whole conversation. And I don't know how much damage that's going to do to their relationship between now and decision day. I think at the end of this episode, we're basically a weekish, maybe a little more than a week away from decision day. So I don't know how that looks. You know, the preview showed them having a huge fight. We also have the retreat. So really not much time. So if there is a lingering issue between any of these couples before decision day, it could lead to a divorce. All right, that is where we are going to wrap things up for the night. And before I go, just want to leave you with one final message in case you didn't get it.